the last you won't remember this, but the last time we spoke was in 2016 for the previous album.
Well,
And
thanks for coming back.
no, thanks for having me, and thanks for taking the time.
Man.
But I want to start out kind of where we left off, because what was that whole process? Because a lot of things happened in the years after after that album. So what was that from your perspective? One thing I want to focus on is you needed a change, and was there a moment that you felt really, yeah, how should I put it, that you felt, okay, I need a change. This is not going in the direction that I wanted to go?
Yes, absolutely. Very intuitive of you. An astute question there. I would say I initially started the project not making a change. I went because Jason Lytle had produced that previous album, Why Are You Okay? And I figured we would do another one thereafter. But at some point along the way, I felt like it was kind of getting away from me, and that it was too much of a continuation of the last record and not a evolution of where the band needed to be heading, or to evolve. Mm. I know that sounds dumb, but it's true. Like at some point, it felt like we were spinning our wheels, we'd say here. It felt like, again, like a producer was taking the reins a bit heavy, and maybe the smarter idea or the more brave or bold idea would be to be ourselves a bit more and not have someone telling us how we sound. Mm-hmm.
And so this time around, you yourself, along with Wolfgang Zimmerman, took the reins.
Yes, sir.
What was it like diving into the more sonic, the more production side of what you do? Because obviously you've been in this business for a while now, but kind of really paying attention to the production side. What was that like for you?
Well, I've always recorded demos, for better or worse, and been like a crack producer of my own songs. So it is kind of nice to be in the driver's seat in an industry where you're told you're not quite fit for that role. It's like you leave certain jobs to certain people, and that's how you find objectivity and a more well-rounded piece, or a whole, basically a whole sound, instead of just my little amateuristic musings. So I felt like it was worth a shot, at least, to hear what I hear in my head, instead of letting it get away all the time, and to making it so clean that it's like, it's acceptable to the masses now that someone else got to put their paws on it. And I don't mean any disrespect to the folks that we've worked with, because they have helped us so much. I wanted a stab at it because I felt like we'd earned it after so many damn records. I mean, why not? Why don't I should get a chance, right? Let's go.
Well, I was going to ask, why do you think that is, that the whole industry operates that way? That it is weird that the artist produces themselves, or why people like you don't always get the chance to do so?
Oh, that's a very deep question. It's going to be different from any band or artist that's gone through this. From my experience, I think it's because, we got lucky out of the gate. We got lucky as shit. And all of a sudden, there's all this attention paid to us. And now there's expectations. And you just want to keep up with expectations. And if you're in the industry now, the expectations are raised, and you can get lost in that. I think that's what happened to me, at least.
Is that a similar thing then with what you mentioned earlier, that you had to, even because you wanted to change, but it's still a tough decision because you work with people that you like, and it's still a difficult decision. So is that a similar thing where you just have to make the jump or take the leap, so to say?
Absolutely. And it sucks. It sucks just like with band members changing out and things like that. There's certain decisions that have to be made only by me, which can weigh heavy. That it's really, if this thing burns down, it's on me when it comes down to it. So if I don't have the balls to figure it out, or the guts to tell someone this isn't exactly my vision, well, then I might not belong here in this job, and I'm not willing to accept that anymore.
Right. Once you kind of started thinking about your own expectations sonically, at least for this record, what did you notice? What did you notice about where your heart was going to?
Well, a lot of it was a lot like basing it on the feel of my demos from my stupid garage or whatever, and trying to stick to that feel of the initial, I don't want to say vibe, but just where it was coming from at that time, and not always polish things to a point where you polish it so much you can't see the luster anymore of what you started with. I would say that was a big driving factor, and my friend Wolfgang Zimmerman, he helped me realize that when I usually defer, to the bigger brains in the room, because I feel forever an amateur. I'm forever grateful for him for him to trust me and say, like, no, like what you had going there was what we should aim towards, and see if we can get more feeling out of that. So again, with good counsel, I always need it, and good people around me and good musicians. I think the Sonics, well, as dirty as they are, portray who we really are.
It's interesting that you say that, because before this interview, I went through our previous talk we had, and you mentioned something about songwriting, that you're always very doubtful of yourself. That throughout the process, you're always second guessing yourself. So how important is that extra voice, as you mentioned, from a Wolfgang or from some of your bandmates, even maybe from your wife or anybody?
It's funny because you don't really do this if you don't trust yourself. You know what I mean? You don't spend the time and the energy and the toiling that it takes to write a song, or to put yourself out there and present a song to someone if you don't trust yourself. It's strange that somewhere in the afterlife of the song, you start to take people's opinions in, and it can influence you in one way or another. Because you trust people that you admire, or whether it's their ear or their stature or their credentials, whatever. I think I lost the point of your question.
No, but having doubts in the process, and having then your own thoughts being affected by outside of opinions, and then how you kind of end up at the place where you're willing to put something out, I suppose.
I still don't know. Robin, I swear, it's still such like a mysterious thing to me. I promise you that I'm still like vulnerable in those moments where it's like, is this okay? Like, is this good enough or something? Like, do you like this? I'm still like very vulnerable to those feelings at that moment. And you'd think at 43 years old, I'd have, well, maybe I have learned a bit with this record, at least, where I'm like, okay, I'm allowed to trust myself a bit more.
Right. And I suppose as well, because it's kind of what you mentioned, the paradoxical nature of it is that, and I've found this with artists in general, that usually they're somewhat shy people and somewhat reserved, and then there's still that drive, or there's something in them that needs them to get it out. So
yeah, the pat on the back.
Is that it?
I don't know. I mean, well, we want to feel like we connect. We want to feel like because we feel like we've hit a nerve within ourselves, and now it gets to be someone else's. Like, if we can strike a nerve within them and connect with people, that's, at least for me, that's all I'm looking for. So of course there's the natural next step of like, okay, next to, you go to trusted advisors, brother, bandmate, former producer that you're still great friends with, whatever. There's a natural inkling to, or urge to make sure that you did a good job.
What were some of the points of emphasis for you? Because there's some I kind of picked out, but I don't know whether they are accurate or not. But were there any things in terms of songwriting that you placed emphasis on, use of words? Because one thing I found is you playing with words a lot and kind of sentences. And
yeah, Robin, I've tried to be less murky and not play with words as much. Okay. This album, honestly, because I've done it so much. I've been lucky to have 6 albums now or something like that. I tried to speak like myself more, and even allow myself to cuss on a record, to say fuck and shit and piss and all kinds of words that I say when I'm talking to people, like my true self. I tried to be less murky and just tell it like I see it, even if it gets me in trouble, because I feel like, again, shit, I mean, it's 6 albums. If you can't talk like yourself, then what's the point?
With this in mind, then, what was the writing process for you like? Because I know this, or at least I think I know that all of it was, or most of it was written before the whole pandemic and everything. So your own mindset, as you mentioned, you try to be less murky. What was that period of writing these songs, in particular the lyrics? What was that like for you?
Harrowing.
Okay.
I mean, brutal.
Okay.
Yeah, those years involved there were absolutely brutal.
Is there one song we can pick out, and we don't have to go into all the minutia of the songs, but what was one that kind of, I should say, it was a harrowing process, that one where you felt relieved when you kind of got through it?
I would say, one that I guess sums up at least the feeling of those years would be Warning Signs, which leads off the album. Just the thought of like personal health, mental health, therapy, counseling. And I think a lot of people share those kind of feelings at times. Like you don't want to be stigmatized by seeking help. I think that that does a pretty good job of at least describing some of those years that you speak of. But I do feel like you'll find them in the other songs too, like where it's like I think it's maybe the next to last song, You Are Nice to Me, where it's like I can't deny it, it's been a hell of a hard time, like admitting it's fucking sucked.
Sure, right. And well, what's interesting then is you go through those years, that's your mentality, and now that one line, and I think it's also in need of repair. We can't do all the things we used to do, and it sucks. I mean, it feels like premonition, and that was only the beginning, so to say, right?
I know the album was done and mixed before any of this pandemic shit. I do hope that there's some of those things that are universal that have some life to them at least.
Sure. In your mind then, and especially writing these type of things down, what for you is the silver lining then? You mentioned trying to make a connection with people. What is there something you get out of it for yourself?
Yeah, I think it's, I mean, even when In Need of Repair came out, I had so many people that I'm not even that close of friends with message me and tell me how much they identified with it. And that, I believe, I mean, money can go fuck itself. Like, if I can get that connection with people that I don't, that means I'm connecting with people I don't even know.
And this you mentioned the kind of the immediate success you guys had. So what was this realization that you can affect people with music, with your music?
Oh, I don't even know that it still feels like an uphill climb. So I'm reluctant to, you know, I'll go knock on wood or something. But,
Fair enough.
The fact that we've had any impact at all was highly unlikely before it started, when it started, how it's gone, and where we're at. It's never seemed like something that was attainable to me, and I still don't trust it.
Well, let me ask it somewhat differently then. The place that you are in now, with in terms of the band and a couple of new members and taking on more of a production role, do you feel this is a next chapter or a new kind of chapter in what you do?
I'm not sure if it's a new chapter or a closing chapter of I really felt like this album was a sister to the previous one. I really saw them in the same light, and that's why I wanted Jason to produce it in the initial recording. But I'm the last to know, honestly, Robin. I never know what the single's gonna be. I'm always wrong about it. I never know. I can never predict what Band of Horses does, because I think I'm too ingrained in it. It is me. So it's hard for me to like look objectively at what it is. But if to me, when I started the album, I meant it to be like a closing of a chapter, and maybe it's a new beginning that's coming next.
Okay. Well, I find it interesting then, because how do you look? Well, let me think about something you said first. You mentioned that you're too close to it, maybe too ingrained in everything that's going on. So having this lockdown, did you spend some time by yourself, just not doing music and just focusing on other things?
Yeah, it's a bit shameful, honestly, Robin. Like, you'd think that it would be more conducive to writing more songs, like hey, I'm gonna finally learn how to play piano. I'm gonna finally learn how to play guitar correctly. But honestly, the beatdown of it all led me to like a bit of laziness at times, self-loathing because of my personal experience that I was going through, and less. Maybe I can't see it for what it is yet. You know, maybe we're not far enough away from what has happened to all of us to be able to see what really happened to us all during these years. But I do feel a sense of guilt at times where I'm like, I should have written 1 million albums. What the fuck did I do?
I have a similar thing. If you see that guitar behind me, I bought that in the beginning of Corona, and I barely played it. Bought a new guitar and barely played it. So it's...
Hey, you're recording this, so take these tunings down. That's No One's Gonna Love You, and that's The Funeral.
Hey,
they're weird as shit. Don't be hamstrung by traditional means of playing guitar. Find your thing. And don't feel like you have to like do what everyone, you have to read these books and all this shit. Just find what makes you sound cool.
And that's great advice, and it kind of ties into what you said earlier as well. Like, well, I find it interesting because you're always somewhat self-deprecating about your own skills in terms of guitar, and I mean, your voice is incredible, but you would probably never admit it yourself. So, how have you kind of found what you do? How did you find your niche? And I don't know if that's the right way to phrase it, but how did you find kind of the path that you're on now musically, where you are very open and you are willing to do your own thing?
I think, well, one, I had my friend Wolfgang Zimmerman help remind me. I do kind of need some reminding at times, like, yes, your trashy ass guitar playing is what is part of the main identity of this band. If you get away from that, it becomes something different. I do need good people around me, for one. And that's number one. Otherwise, I just love writing songs, and I think I have the ability to write them. Like, even if I tell myself constantly that I can't do it today or something like that, I know in my heart that I can. So, and I can't not do it. I don't know what else to do. And three, desperation. I don't want to go back to flipping eggs for a living. No offense to cafe workers, but I don't want to go back to working in a cafe. So it's and having these kids. I have 4 kids. Like, I have to fight.
Sure. Final question then. How should I phrase this? As a songwriter, what is the pursuit, so to say? Are you always looking for the perfect song, or are you looking for to capture a certain sentiment or a certain feeling on an album?
I'm looking for the song that wants me to join it. I'm looking for the song that, like, can't help but tap me on the shoulder, and that can be a bit of an excuse at times, because you're just like waiting for it. But I just want to be a conduit at times as being first and foremost a music fan, a music lover, and I mean a rabid, devourer of music. I want to, how do I put this? I don't want to be heard, because it's not exactly that. I want to hear what's being put through me, whether that be through a conversation or a song or through any art medium or an act of kindness. Yeah, that.
That sounds great. One last thought then to round off. You mentioned you're an avid music consumer as well. So for anybody watching this, what would you recommend? A good song or album you heard recently?
Oh my goodness, where do we begin? I can tell you, I think the album I listened to most probably this year was by the band Bachelor.
Okay.
I loved their album so much. But it's funny. I tend to sometimes I go backwards, because I'm like, like with new friends and stuff. I'm always trying to turn people on to shit. Like, I mean, 2 nights ago it was going through all of Otis Redding's deep cuts. A week ago it's going through all, Rolling Stones deep cuts, or digging into Big Crit, or Gucci Mane and shit like that. Like, I breeze around, but I'm never good at this question. I know that I'm never good at this question because I'm overwhelmed by it.
It's impossible to answer almost, because it changes from 1 hour to the next, I suppose.
It certainly does. Thank you for understanding.
No, I had a similar thing, and when you mentioned some of the things you've been listening to. I've been diving into Marvin Gaye, and then maybe the next day I'll go into Jimi Hendrix or Pink Floyd. It just goes all over the place. So.
And thank goodness for that. I'm glad that I can't ever answer that question like with any sort of clarity.
But and then to make the whole conversation full circle, then that's why you need to change things up every once in a while, right? I mean, some people can do the same thing every day without complaining, and that's beautiful. I think there's a lot of I have a lot of respect for people who can do that, but other people they need different impulses. They need to change up things. So I suppose you fall more in that category.
I do. You wouldn't know it from my albums, but but I do need a constant barrage of different flavors. And with Band of Horses, maybe there's more of a continuity in our sound, which doesn't really reflect exactly what my actual reality is.
So would you ever make an album that's full of happy songs or something completely different? Or are you now too ingrained into what kind of Band of Horses is that you can't deviate too extremely?
I'll tell you, at least if this album taught me something, is that I can trust myself a bit more. And I should be more hesitant to be led by someone else's vision. I don't know what that will lead to exactly, but I hope that it leads to, again, connecting to people and finding like a universal something that we can all or more people can feel together. I wouldn't sacrifice. I don't want to be like, do like an art rock record, at least quite yet. I still do feel the pull to want to bring big emotions to as many people as possible.
And on those words, Ben, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me. It's always a pleasure. You're always very open and candid about what you think. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Robin. It's great to talk to you again, man. I hope to talk to you again soon.